This video is sponsored by SimpliSafe. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. Did you know that Russia never built a long-range stealth bomber that was similar to the American B-2 Spirit? In fact, the US is the only country to actively operate stealth bomber fleet. But that might all be about to be changed by the Russian PAK. Now, PAK is a Russian acronym for Prospective Aviation Complex for Long-Range Aviation, which is a far less catchy name. The aircraft claims that it'll have a range of 7,500 miles and the ability to remain in the air for 30 hours. In theory, the PAK could hypothetically almost carry a nuclear warhead from Moscow to New York City without the need to refuel until they were back over the Atlantic Ocean. That was a lot of qualifying statements I packed into there. Compare that to the estimated 2,500 mile range of the new American B-21 or the possible 5,200 mile range of China's H-20, and you can understand why some experts are very skeptical, while others are claiming it will be the most lethal stealth bomber ever produced. In this video, I want to examine what makes this aircraft unique compared to Russia's existing strategic bomber fleet, if it would be useful to them in Ukraine, and I want to analyze how the PAK might fit into Russia's larger air and nuclear strategy. This is the Tupolev Design Bureau, just east of downtown Moscow along the banks of the Yaza River. Tupolev is Russia's state-owned aerospace defense design company. It specializes in long-range aviation. Founded in 1922, Tupolev has designed over 100 models for both civilian and military aircraft. This includes all of Russia's bomber aircraft from the Tu-160 to the Tu-2 of World War II. Russia's attempt to match the stealth bomber capability for the first time hit the ground as early as 2007, but it was in 2008 when Tupolev designed and financed the PAK. Then, by April of 2014, Mikhail Pogolyan, head of Russia's United Aircraft Corporation, announced that Tupolev had finalized the initial designs and were moving on to the construction of a prototype. Now, construction began about 500 miles to the east in a small Russian city of Kazan. In 2015, the Kapo-Kampovets aviation plant won the contract to build the first PAK prototypes. Kapo has long since been the aviation plant for all of Russia's strategic bombers. In 2017, the Russian news agency TASS announced that Moscow completed a full-scale wooden model of the PAK, but didn't release any photos of what the model looked like. By this time, however, it was announced that the PAK would be configured as a flying wing, the first of its kind for Russian aviation. Now, a flying wing design refers to an aircraft design in which the entire aircraft, including the fuselage and the wings, are integrated into a single lifting and control surface. In essence, the aircraft resembles a large wing with minimal or no distinct fuselage or tail section. This design often results in aerodynamic efficiency and reduced drag compared to traditional aircraft configurations that have separate wings and fuselage. According to this Russian source, the PAK's total max takeoff weight is 112 tons, with a weapons payload of 30 tons. That would be a lot of junk in that trunk. For context, the B-21 is expected to carry a payload of somewhere in the ballpark of a range of 15 tons. The US Department of Defense estimates China's H-20 stealth bomber could have a weapons capacity of about 10 tons. And that's why I take all these numbers with a grain of salt here, because this is a prototype aircraft, and all we have to go on right now is limited details that come from Russian sources at this point. In 2019, Russian news and government agencies set a timeline for the first PAK prototype in 2021, with the maiden flight scheduled to be between 2024 and 2026. However, it appears these dates were a little bit too aggressive. Take a look at these leaked Russian documents that I found surfaced on Twitter. For once, the military leaks were not on the War Thunder forums. These blurry photos are the production schedule for the Ilyushin Aviation Complex, which specializes in military aviation hardware. The first photo shows the annual production goals from 2022 all the way to 2023. In this next photo, all the way at the bottom, you can just barely make out the words PAK in Russian. Alongside it, you can see the production schedule for two components in 2023 and 2024, along with one component in 2025 and 2026. This indicates that Russia planned to build at least 6 PAK prototypes between 2023 and 2026. This new schedule is a few years behind the original production schedule. However, delays are something that new and complex military hardware face all the time. According to Eurasian Times, quote, revisions in user specifications and staff requirements are one of the primary causes of delays. But what about what's powering the PAK? According to the Warzone, the PAK's engines are expected to be derived from the NK-3202 used in the Tu-160M Blackjack, Russia's strategic bomber. The NK-3202 is a afterburning 3-spool low-bypass turbofan jet engine that can produce over 55,000 pounds of thrust, and it's one of the most powerful combat aircraft engines in the world. According to interviews between Russian media and the Russian United Engine Corporation, it has planned lifespan of up to 12 to 21 years, depending on use and maintenance. I want you to take a look at these Russian patents. They were submitted in August of 2021. These drawings are the only publicly available official design of the Tupolev PAK. These Russian patents describe the engine air intake of the PAK. Looking at these drawings, we can see that the aircraft will be powered by 2 engines, with air intake inlets on the top of the wing on either side of the cabin. This looks strikingly familiar to both the B-21 and the H-20. Looking at these drawings from the patent, we can see that this will be powered by 2 engines with air intake inlets on the top of the wing on either side of the cabin. The decision to put the air intakes above the wing rather than below, like on most modern aircraft, help hide the intake channels from ground-based radar detection. Placing the air intake on top can also help with engine performance. As air moves over the wing, the curved surface on top accelerates the air so that it moves faster than the air moving underneath. This general principle is what gives airplanes lift. By placing the engine air intake on top of the wings, engineers can take advantage of this phenomena to get the maximum amount of air moving into the intake valves as possible. However, there is a reason most aircraft are not designed this way. When an aircraft changes its quote-unquote angle of attack by pitching upward, airflow going over the wings can become disrupted. You can experience this feeling yourself just by sticking your hand out of a car window and feeling the difference in the wind when you adjust the angle of your palms. When there's a high angle of attack, air intake on the top of the wing can become choked off and lead to engine failure. Because the Russian PAK stealth bomber is designed for stealth and endurance, and not maneuverability, it makes sense for engineers to design its engines this way. You can also see that the entirety of the engine is contained within the airframe. This dramatically improves the stealth of the aircraft by reducing the surfaces and angles for air defense radar to reflect off of. Placing the engines inside the airframe also allows for the opportunity to reduce heat and exhaust signatures. However, from what we can tell by these designs, there does not currently appear to be any exhaust diffusion techniques that would give the PAK exceptional stealth. In fact, according to the aircraft experts at the Warzone, the patents indicate that the overall design of the engines and airframe do not show enough features to classify the PAK as a very low observable or VLO aircraft like the US B-21. But what type of strategy would Russia hypothetically use with these aircraft? But first, I think one thing you learn from time in the military is the importance of safety and security. When it comes to home security, there's probably nothing more important than keeping you and your family safe at all times. Probably the next best thing to the security of an active military installation is having a home security system from SimpliSafe. SimpliSafe provides comprehensive security with advanced sensors, cameras, and 24/7 professional monitoring to detect threats and dispatch first responders even when you're away. With SimpliSafe's 24/7 live guard protection, expert agents act within seconds of an alarm and ensure the proper steps are taken, and can even address intruders in real time, stopping them in their tracks. SimpliSafe won't lock you into a long-term contract, and professional monitoring plans start at less than $1 a day. They offer professional installation, but I gotta say, the system is so easy to install, even I could do it myself. And right now, you can save 20% on your system with the first month free when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring at simplisafe.com/task. Remember, there's no safe like SimpliSafe. Strategic bombers like the PAK are an incredibly valuable asset. Just look at how in 1994, when Ukraine agreed to denuclearize, they didn't just transfer 2,000 nuclear warheads to Russia. The deal was also dependent on them chopping up and destroying their entire strategic bomber fleet, which included 27 of the Tu-95 bombers and 11 of the supersonic Tu-160 bombers. I think it was 44 in total that they gave up or destroyed. This type of bomber is meant for more than just dropping nukes. One of their main, more practical missions is suppression, destruction of enemy air defenses. Strategic bombers are supposed to target and knock out all your S-300 air defenses, which in theory paves the way for all the follow-on forces. The new Russian stealth PAK wouldn't just be for the attention-grabbing headline of attacking Washington, D.C. That's highly unlikely. No, this bomber would hypothetically be even more useful for fights near your border. Now, stealth bombers have an advantage when the risk of anti-air defense systems is high. As we've learned, gaining air superiority can be very difficult. So from Russia's perspective, hypothetically, if they had the PAK with similar abilities, they might be able to use it to gain air superiority against targets close to their borders. What I mean by that is a slow-moving Russian Tu-95 like the B-52 would be identified and shot down long before it got close to its target. To get a better idea of how the PAK would be used tactically, we can look at how Russia's deploying their bomber fleet in Ukraine. These aircraft use their range and their ability to fire far-reaching cruise missiles to hit their targets deep inside Ukraine. According to the war zone, Russian strategic bombers target Ukrainian supply and equipment facilities, key infrastructure and power plants, as well as the supply routes used to bring Western military equipment into the country. Russia's strategic bombers like the Tu-160 have also been active in Syria, striking rebel-held cities in support of Syrian dictator al-Assad. Just take a look at this pan-Eurasian flight path used by Russian bombers to fly back and forth from northern Russia to conduct bombings in Syria. When we look inside the PAK, we see that Russia is planning to put long-range, nuclear-capable hypersonic cruise missiles, specifically your Kh-95. Current Kinzhal hypersonic cruise missiles are capable of reaching Mach 10 and have a range of about 2,000 kilometers, or 1,250 miles, with the ship-launched variant, the Zyklon hypersonic missile, reaching Mach 8 and traveling 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles. In other words, very fast and more difficult to intercept with air defense systems. The Kh-95 is Russia's in-development air-launched hypersonic glide vehicle. Russian state media confirmed that the Kh-95 is intended to be carried not only by the PAK, but also the upgraded Tu-23M and Tu-160M strategic bombers. In 2015, Russia's United Instrument Manufacturing Corporation told Russian media that they developed a one-of-a-kind communication system for the PAK that would enable the bomber to conduct analysis, make changes, and switch its operational modes, on top of claiming that the communication system is capable of functioning while being jammed. Engineers also claim that the aircraft's antenna system is developed on the basis of what's a smart skin concept, improving aerodynamics and stealth. So how many PAK aircraft are expected to replace them? This is a hard question to answer with the projected production date not for another 5 years. We can, however, look at the current rate that the Kazan aircraft factory is producing new Tu-160M bombers. According to news reports, Russia's plan to purchase 50 Tu-160M aircraft at a rate of 3 per year. Analysis done by a retired British Army intelligence officer revealed that after the invasion of Ukraine, Russian combat aircraft production remained steady in 2022 despite sanctions. However, Miller attributed this steady production to the stockpiling of Western microchips that he says could cause a swift decrease in production if those stockpiles run dry. It's not yet known how many PAK aircraft Russia plans on purchasing once the program's ready to start large-scale production. However, Russian defense experts want as many as 40 spread across 6 regiments. It'll likely be some time before we see the PAK in the Russian fleet at those numbers. But what about all those sanctions against Russia over the war in Ukraine that I keep hearing all about? Are war supplies running into shortages as a result of sanctions? Specifically high-end microchips used in technologically sophisticated systems? According to a 2024 report by the War Zone run by Tyler Rajaway, Russia's A-100 electronic warfare aircraft is already facing delays as a result of these sanctions. However, when asked specifically about the PAK in 2022 in an interview, the Deputy Prime Minister for Russia's Industry and Trade said that, quote, "The PAK is a complex of strategic aviation, and there is no talk of using foreign parts in a project of this type," end quote. Could sanctions be an issue? Maybe. Or it could just be inevitable delays that accompany trying to build new military technology. According to multiple sources, the PAK is planned to make a, quote, maiden flight over Moscow sometime between 2024 and 2030, which means it would have taken about 15 years from its inception to flight. And if Russia wanted to mitigate risk from sanctions, multiple sources have recently reported that China's stepping up their support for Russia by providing them with satellite data for military purposes and increasingly sending microelectronics and machine tools to help Russia's production efforts. The PAK's slow speed is on par with other stealth bombers, like China's H-20 is reported to have subsonic speed of around 630 miles per hour. Meanwhile, the United States B-2 stealth bomber has an undisclosed speed of high subsonic. And the new B-21 is not expected to perform above Mach 1 either. It's also true that the PAK would fit into Russia's strategic nuclear triad. The nuclear triad is a concept that assures a country can maintain its nuclear strike capabilities in the event of a first strike event. Redundancies in nuclear weapons employment means that even if your enemy can take out your land-based nuclear weapons, you still have aircraft and submarine capable of performing a nuclear strike in retaliation. This assurance is the key to deterring a nation from using nuclear weapons against your country. No one wants to nuke you as long as they know you can nuke them back. Right now, Russia has the ability to carry nuclear weapons on several of its long-range aircraft like your T-190, T-22, and Tu-95. However, the PAK is unparalleled hypothetically in both its range and its stealth, meaning it can pose a more serious threat to the United States' security than any of Russia's current strategic bombers. Currently, the Kh-47M2 air-launched ballistic missile, capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. In 2021 interview, Russian defense expert Mykolai Kalarovidik argued that this is not enough of a standoff range for modern Russian bombers to be an effective threat against modern militaries. For Russia's modern fleet to be a lethal deterrent for NATO or the United States, they argue that an air-launched hypersonic like the Kh-96 must have a range of at least 5,500 kilometers. Only then will these hypersonics have the ability to reach out against the outermost modern air defense limits. According to Russia, these hypersonic missiles will have the capability to be both conventionally and nuclear armed. The demand for highly technical and critical parts are still coming from the West, according to investigative reporting. This could mean that they have some hard choices to make when it comes to aircraft, drone, and missile production. Do we use these limited parts to make something we know is useful now, or do we take a risk and invest in something new? Even though Russia has clearly stated that the PAK is designed to replace the Tu-95, modernization tests on the Tu-95 systems and electronics took place as recently as January 2023. The Tu-95 MSM, the missile carrier, took place with collaboration between UAC and Tupolev. The PAK is the next step for Russia's strategic bomber aircraft. It can serve both as a nuclear deterrent via the nuclear triad and still be useful in conventional missions hypothetically when the adversary is armed with modern anti-aircraft weapons. This has led some to believe that the PAK may never leave the drafting table. As early as 2012, Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Rogozin publicly remarked that the development of modern air defense and the extended operational reach of air defense missiles makes developing something like the PAK a pointless endeavor. While on paper the PAK claims to be able to carry more ordnance and fly further than any other stealth bomber in history, there is still a lot yet to be seen in practice. And be sure to grab one of our new Cleanup Crew t-shirts from the merch store, link in the description.